Ever since I can remember, anytime there was a storm, my mother, everything would stop. If my mother was cooking, she would cut off the stove, put the lids on the pots, and put everything down. And we would go to a room, all of us, my brothers, my two brothers, myself, my mom, and we would sit there and wait out the storm. My mom would tell us, God is doing his work. And so we would basically, sit quietly, and you would just, hear the thundering lightning, and, see the drops of rain as they would hit the windows. And sometimes she would open the door, especially, as the storm died down, she would open the door, for us to see the storm and see, the changing from the sky being a dark blue to, lightening up again. And so even if we were, about to eat, had the table set and the dishes on the table, we could not eat because, of course, silverware drew electricity. And so, it would be one of those things that I was just like, oh man, you're trying to rush to eat and do those things. And we knew that when the storm came, it was quiet time. And so I believe, as I've shared on my podcast and my blog before, that my mother's way of raising us, her principles, that she actually principles that I drew from her life stories, her being so brave and just courageous, and you know, um, and sharing her stories, and taking that in as life lessons. And storms come in many forms. If we really sit back, storms come throughout all the major seasons. We have winter storms, we have summer storms, we have, tornadoes, we have all of those different things that can hit, hurricanes in the fall. Every season has its own storm. Every stage in our lives have their own storms. And one of the things that I've written about in my manuscript, Compass, Out of the Darkness into the Light, is that as a child, because of how our mother raised us to deal with storms, I incorporated that into my principles to live by, into my way of being in addressing storms. Because although they seemed often, scary. You hear the lightning, you see the lightning, you hear the thundering, the roar, um, and it can be scary. But it's when you actually submit to the storm, when you actually let it do the work that it is here to do, is when the storm leaves you. And it leaves a fresh new beginning. It leaves a different perspective. After the storm, you could tell when it was winding down, because then, we start talking, we start joking, because that time that we spent not saying anything gave us time you know, to reflect on life. I know I did, and my brothers did, by way of the conversation afterwards. You remember when you did this, Tamika, or you remember when this happened. And we would laugh, and to a point that we would forget about eating. We forget about what it was that we wanted to do before the storm came. And so, often I would go outside or just look outside, and I see, this pinkish sky, and it just seemed like the sky was clear. It seemed like there was like this illumination that occurred around the trees, around signs, just in what I was looking at, that things became clear. That although there was this organized chaos, it brought clarity. And often the storms, when I embrace the storms, when I embrace what my what I experienced with my father, him not being there, and years of anger, when I embrace the misuse of my body, frustration, resentment, wishing that somehow I could redo my life over, and you realize that there's no do over. there's learning from that experience and applying the lessons that you learn. And so when I embrace the storms, it's almost like the treasures from the storm, the new insight, being trustworthy, telling the truth, seeing myself in the storm, the quiet, the innocence, seeing my joy, is when I had a new perspective about life. The day that I ran out of the house, when one of the persons had tried to misuse my body again, it's as if the sun greeted me that day as I jumped off my porch, and I just saw things in a brand new way, in a brand new light, that I didn't have to be angry, that I didn't have to be afraid, that my voice meant something, my no meant something, my life means something. And now that we have moved or transitioned to the Midwest, we are now in the storm season, because in the East, in Ohio, we had storms, we had, you know, uh, lightning, thundering, we had that. And I carried a lot of those principles that I learned growing up with me and dealing with the storm. So I am grateful that I don't have the fear, that, I feel like if it's my time, it's my time. And I am bringing those lessons over to my children. We moved from Ohio to Oregon, and therefore we didn't have a lot of the storms where we were. We would have the downpours, the rain, um, but very little lightning, and very little thundering. Occasionally you hear a roar or two, but our winters were filled with heavy winds often. So now that we're back in the Midwest, we actually had our first major storm. There was not a tornado warning, but there was a tornado watch. And my children, trying to talk to them about the storm, and we eventually moved downstairs to take cover just in case, right? Because that's what they were encouraging us to do. It had hit somewhere, and I'm just like, rather be safe than sorry. And so as we were sitting there, my daughter was kind of going back and forth. Should we go over there? The other place where they have a basement, and it was almost if that uneasiness, that unsettlement that she still had, and really just talking through that. It's okay to be afraid of the storm, but this is what I learned, and this is what I did, and I've learned to embrace the storms, right? And I did tell my children, when it's our time to go, it's our time to go. And the best thing we can do is to listen and to prepare and to be safe, right? And I didn't think it was safe for us to go running out in the middle of a storm, right? Um, and it was one thing that my son actually said that was so kind of breathtaking and so matter of the fact. He said basically, why are you going to keep running away from the storm when it will continue to come back? And I thought that was pivotal, because I've written about that before in my blogs, that often when we don't embrace the storms, we don't embrace and storms in the essence of not just the physical storm, but the mental storms that we have, the emotional storms we have, the daymares, the nightmares, the thoughts that continue to come in and out of our mind, replay over and over again. When you think about PTSD and all those things that can come to us, reminding us of a storm that has already passed, but reminding us that as if it is still there in our head, in our being. And what my son said was so pivotal, that often we want to escape these emotional storms, these mental storms. We want to drink, we want to eat, we want to run to a different state. We want to hide in our house, in our bedroom. We want to get away from all this stuff that is still this residual of the storms that is still going on inside of us. But the more we continue to run, the more the storms play over and over and over in our head, and sometimes even appear stronger to a point that we feel like we can't bear it anymore. And you know those stories. And it's when we understand, one of the things that I realized when and I've said it before, when we face our truths, when we face the experience itself, not in judgment of what occurred, but the facts and what happened, when we face it, when we allow ourselves to be still and to allow the storm to take its place. And when we eventually say and realize that we don't have to become the storm, we don't have to be afraid of the storm. There have been many times often when I've said, not now. I can't do that. No more storm. And as if the cloud has left me, that it left me. And I think just like when Jesus gives the example, or the Bible gives the example of Jesus being in the boat with his disciples. And basically they were like, Master, it's storming out here. You see, we're about to die. We're about to die. And he's like, you have little faith. And he quiet the storm. And I think that quietness is understanding that you are in control. You are the master of the storms that come your way inside, those experiences that happen. You are the master of your feelings and your emotions, that nothing overcomes you unless you believe it can, unless you allow it to do so. And so eventually, as I traveled back to last weekend when we had our major storm, my daughter settled down and we just continued to talk about not running away from storms, but actually giving it its time, its place. That we're going to pray and hope that we've made the right decision to stay here instead of running out into the storm. Because often we do want to run, but you know that saying, we can run so much that we run right into the middle of the storm and get swept away in it instead of just staying still. And I was with my children when we could hear the storm, the rain slowing down, and hear the thundering becoming less and less, and hear lightning, just that little flickering and the little sound of lightning, that we could actually hear the calmness, the peacefulness, basically overcoming the storm, returning, if you will, to its natural state. And when we allow the thoughts to just be, and we don't fight them, and we just listen and we just observe, and we tell ourselves that storm is no longer here, it's gone. That I don't have to be swept away by these thoughts. I don't have to be swept away by an experience that's already happened. There's nothing I can do about that storm. That I can embrace those thoughts when they come instead of running from them, instead of hiding from them. Because as you embrace them, they get weaker and weaker and weaker. And you get stronger, stronger, and stronger. And so it's so important, again, that we allow ourselves to feel those emotions. I learned early on the importance of facing my emotions. That's part of understanding or the truth, understanding all truths. That yes, I have emotions and feelings. That yes, this has happened. But yes, also, I can get through this. There's something much more powerful than me. That I don't have to become the storm. And that I know that they will occasionally come. And that I can have the faith and the trust and the belief that I can overcome the storms. See, we know it's stormy weather. We know it's going to happen. The biggest thing is we prepare. How do we prepare? We continue to dress our minds every day and who it is that we are, who we choose to be. That I am brave, that I am the master of my emotions and my feelings. That although the storms may come, I don't have to be swept up in them. That these storms will happen. And so I've just been trying to share on this podcast, not just because it's National, Child Abuse Prevention Month, but through any traumatic experience that you've been through. There's nothing we can do to change it. You know that. But there's something we can do to heal from within, to realize that my power is in how I construct, how my perspective on the storm, the experience, and what happened. And that I can cultivate the type of person that I am. I can continue to cultivate the compassion, the forgiveness, the love, the understanding, the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that you're greater than your experiences, that you're here to evolve to the highest version of yourself. And I am so thankful for how my mother raised us to understand that storms yet are powerful and that many things can and do happen. But to understand too that I am powerful too, that I am greater than these mental storms that come, that you are greater than these mental storms that come, these emotional storms. And then may I encourage you to be an observer and to take moments where you embrace stillness, that you know that every storm has a purpose, has a reason, and that when that storm is over, it will bring a new light, new day, a new perspective, a clarity that you didn't have before. And it's bringing you closer and closer to the highest version of yourself, to your spiritual being. This is Tamika Chambers with Create a Generational Love Cycle. I hope this podcast has been beneficial to you, and that one of the principles that I write about, that I embrace every day, is that I have the ability to overcome the storms in my life. That when it is my time to move on, I will. But in the meantime, I will continue upon this journey to become the highest version of myself. And I encourage you to do the same. On Mondays, I reach out to you on Heart to Heart Mondays. As you know, that they say, research says that Mondays are one of the most common days that people often have cardiac events. And cardiac events isn't something that has to happen to you. You do not have to be a statistic, even if you're dealing with high blood pressure or, have had a heart attack or coronary artery disease. There are things you can still do to take care of your heart. And I'm not just talking about exercise, physical activity, and nutrition, and although those are important, I'm talking about how your perspective on life. I'm talking about how you are dealing with your life experiences along this earthly journey, forgiveness and compassion, truth and understanding. And then I also too have been sharing the seeds we sow when I'm talking about raising children to make a positive impact in their life, setting, resowing or confirming who they are in these 52 virtues that I've been sharing with my children, and how that has been helping us to not only bond together, but also to confirm who it is that I want to be as a parent, creating that generational love cycle. And so I hope your Friday is off to a good start. Really think about what it is, who it is that you are, who it is that you want to be. Despite everything that's happened to you, you still have the right, the divine right to choose. You still have the divine right to fulfill your purpose here on life. You still can create a generational love cycle by changing the thoughts that created the cycle of pain. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care of yourself. As always, make this lifetime great because you still can.